Hey y'all, today we are going to talk about inequalities. An inequality is similar to an equation, except for an equal sign, it has a greater than equal to, a less than, or a less than equal to sign. So let me write an example at the top of an inequality. An inequality would be like saying 2x is less than 10. Now, you would follow the normal steps of an equation to solve. So you would divide by 2 on both sides. That would cancel out, and you'd be left with x is less than 5. So it's very similar to an equation. You just replace the equal sign with a greater than sign, a greater than equal to, a less than, or a less than equal to sign. So let's look at a few problems and let's practice. First of all, we need to talk about our symbols. A greater than symbol, you're always going to have an open circle. So anytime you see that greater than sign, you're going to have an open circle. And the greater than is pointing to the right. So as long as you have your variable on the left, you can shade to the right. So let's look at this answer. X is greater than 2. So you would go to 2 on your number line, you would make a circle. Because it is greater than, you leave the circle open, and then you would shade everything to the right, because that is telling you that x is greater than 2. X can be anything bigger than 2. It can't be 2, it's anything bigger than 2. Let's check out this one with the line under it. So anytime your symbols have a line underneath, that means it's greater than or equal to. No less than a minimum of that number. So x is greater than or equal to 4. So the first thing that you would do is you would find that number on the number line, positive 4. You're going to actually close the circle in this time because it has that bar at the top. It has the actual equal bar underneath your greater than. So you're going to close it in, and then you would shade to the right. Okay, let's look at a less than. Less than or fewer than. So less than is pointing to the left. As long as your variable is on the left side, you can shade the direction that the arrow is pointing. So it's pointing left, you can shade left. X is less than -3. So we're going to find -3. Right there. This will be an open circle because it does not have that equal to bar, so an open circle. And we're going to shade to the left. That means that x can be anything less than -3. It can't be -3, anything less than -3. And let's look at less than or equal to. So this is going to be a closed circle. Let's go back and fill that in for this one. A closed circle because it has that equal to bar. So x is less than or equal to 1. We're going to find that number on our number line, determine which circle we're going to use. So it's going to be a closed circle because it has that equal bar. My variable is on the left, so that tells me shade the way that your arrow is pointing. If your arrow is pointing left, and your variable is on the left, you shade left. If your variable is the wrong side, you're going to have to flip it. So let's look at a few notes. The steps for solving two-step and multi-step equations can be applied to linear inequalities. So it's like what it was when I started out this notes. It's the same steps as an equation, but you just have a less than, a greater than, a equal to sign between it, instead of your equal bars. For inequalities, be sure to blank the inequality blank when multiplying or dividing by a negative number. So we're going to always make sure that we flip the inequality sign when multiplying or dividing by a negative. Now that is so important. Only when multiplying or dividing. That's the only time. So let me give you an example before we go on down. That would be as if we had, see this example at the top, x is less than 5. We didn't have to flip the sign because it was not negative. However, if we had a negative 2x up there and we divided by a negative, only when you divide or multiply by a negative, you flip your sign. So this would not be the same sign. We would have to flip it if we divided by a negative. So, solve a multi-step inequality. Solve using, how do we solve normal equations? Using what kind of operations? Inverse. Inverse operations. So let's look at this example and see if we can follow our steps of a normal equation. However, this is an inequality because it doesn't have an equal bar, it has a symbol. So the first step would be to subtract 2x on both sides. That would cancel away, and we'd be left with 5 is less than 4x plus 17. Next would be to subtract 17 on both sides. So we have negative 12 is less than 4x. Now we would need to divide by 4 on both sides. Now, we are not dividing by a negative. We're dividing by a positive. So this cancels away. Negative 12 divided by 4 is negative 3 is less than x. Notice that my variable is on the right. So when I get ready to shade, I'm going to have to shade the opposite way of how my arrow looks. You can simply fix that by flipping everything around up front. So if this is negative 3 is less than x, change the entire thing around. X is greater than negative 3. Notice that I put my variable now on the left. I did flip my sign because I'm changing everything around. And negative 3. Now, let's look. Determine, are we going to use an open circle or a closed circle? We would use an open circle because our sign does not have the equal bar. So we're going to find that number of negative 3. Now, like I was saying earlier, if you're looking at your problem backwards, you're going to shade opposite of what it looks like. So shading opposite of what this looks like, I would not point left, I would point right. That's why I decided to change my problem around so that it would be easier for me to shade in the long run. So opposite of this pointing left would be for me to shade right. Now you can see my arrow is pointing right. That's why you can change it. So x is greater than negative 3. X can be anything bigger than negative 3. So would a solution for this inequality be positive 5? Yes, because it is greater than negative 3. Anything bigger than negative 3 would work for this problem. Make sure the variable is on the left. Shade in the direction of the inequality sign. Like I said earlier, you're only allowed to shade in that direction when your variable is on the left. Let's do 2 more review problems. So looking at these 2, our first step would be to subtract 14x on both sides. Now we're left with negative 5 is less than x minus 2. Our next step would be to add 2 on both sides. So negative 3 is less than x. You notice that your variable is on the wrong side. So we're going to have to flip the entire problem around to know which way to shade, or you can just remember my variable is on the wrong side, so I have to shade opposite of what this looks like. I like to go ahead and change mine around so that I'm 100% sure which way I shade. Don't forget to change that sign though. So x is greater than negative 3. So we need to go down, we need to find negative 3. This will be an open circle because it does not have that equal bar. And we're going to shade to the right. Okay, let's look at example 2. Working through example 2. Our first step would be to distribute. So 6 times 2 is 12x. 6 times -1 is -6. Bring down the entire rest of your problem. Now, we can work through the problem like normal. Our first step would be to subtract 10x on both sides. -1 is less than or equal to 2x minus 6. Our next step would be to add 6 on both sides. So 5 is greater than or equal to 2x, divide by 2 on both sides. So 5 divided by 2 is going to be 2.5 is greater than or equal to x. Notice that our variable is on the wrong side. So we now need to flip the entire problem around, or we need to make sure, hey, we got a shade left because this is backwards. Like I said before, I like to go ahead and change mine around. So x is less than or equal to 2.5. You can leave that as a fraction, but just know that on a number line, it's easier to change it to a decimal because you're looking for that decimal. So we're going to find 2.5. Notice that this is going by increments of 1 whole. So we're going to have to find in between. 2.5 between 2 and 3 is going to be right there. Now, this has that equal bar under it, so we have to do a closed-in circle. And we're going to point to the left. Don't forget, if you're ever multiplying or dividing by a negative, you're going to have to flip your sign completely around. I hope this helps. Y'all have a great day.